And we actually had some really crappy exploit code, even as old as a year and a half ago.
The ClickJacking concept.
Yeah, not related specifically to why we pulled the speech, but just other things. We played with it. It worked. We actually came out with a couple of different exploits based off of it. And then about Black Hat, Jared and I started talking about some other stuff.
So what is this ClickJacking stuff? It'll, on one hand, it's a really simple exploit, and on the other hand, it can get really dangerous real fast. So ClickJacking, well, let's start earlier. Let's say you visit an attacker-controlled website or some page with code on it that it belongs to a bad guy. Let's MySpace profiles, a la Sammy Worm. So we know there's really, really bad things that we can done with JavaScript. We can do, phishing with superbait scans, steal passwords, steal cookies, internet scanning, steal history, all the great things that the browser guys have not done a whole lot about. But let's say we can get past all that, and let's say we can, when the user clicks on a link, clicks on an image, or clicks on anything on the website, that we can control what they click on, because with DHTML, we can slide whatever we want under the mouse invisibly. So how bad can that get? So that's, in essence, ClickJacking. So that, like Robert said a year and a half ago, our first implementation was just click fraud, moving around banners underneath the ads to force people to click on things they wouldn't have otherwise done. So up comes the Black Hat stuff, and we're researching. I think every once in a while we talk for 15 minutes, and a vendor calls and goes, "What are you doing?" So we developed this ClickJacking stuff. We develop our exploits. We're getting the slides together, and Robert, being the polite guy that he is, shares with a few people, one of which is Adobe.
So we had a brief, what Jeremiah was working on and what I was working on was separate but also very intertwined. So we basically put his code inside my code, and it magically made it a whole lot worse. And it started snowballing, and so the first thing we found was an Adobe issue, and the specifics we can't talk about, at least yet. And they know about it. They've agreed, yes, that's an issue. And actually, they thought we were probably not telling them the truth or telling them the whole story at first, kind of funny. And we actually just thought we were finding something that was naturally there. We didn't realize we were finding anything weird. And then later on, we started finding more and more issues within the browsers, and it affected all the different browsers with the exception of things like links. So you can all go back to links if you feel like it.
So we're of the opinion that ClickJacking as a problem is within the domain of the browsers. Our exploit code, the one that we really, really wanted to show here, was using an Adobe product just to demonstrate its power. So when we showed it to them, they were, well, really worried and said, well, we know whether or not the browser guys want to fix this stuff, we would like to protect our users as best we can. We weren't given much time. You didn't tell us, and they thought we were going to zero-day them. We didn't even think it was their problem, but they took ownership of it, which is a really weird reversal of fortunes, where the security researchers are telling a vendor, no, it's not your issue, and the vendor's going, yeah, it's really bad, please stop. So it's kind of different for us, right? So we consented to give them more time to fixing the issue, and that was that.
Yeah, so we've also, and like Jer said, this has nothing at all to do with Adobe. It's really a browser issue, except that Adobe's affected by it. The browser companies did not ask us not to talk about it, so we will talk about it. There's certain small aspects that are probably not worth talking about, but there are a lot of other companies, a lot of other websites, a lot of other products that are going to be equally as bad affected as Adobe is. They're just one of them. They felt like they wanted some time. We're giving them the time. We have talked with other PCER teams. At least one other one said, yeah, definitely this is going to affect us.
So if you're on the web, you use a browser, whether you turn JavaScript on or off, it will affect you.
It has nothing to do with JavaScript, despite what some people have said. Yes? Not so far.
Let's see. The IE team knows. Mozilla team knows.
Yeah, Cisco knows.
It's a long-standing issue. How they choose to fix it and when, who knows?
Yeah,
it's not like a buffer overflow. If that's what you're asking, there's really nothing. There's be an update. There's no patch for it. There would have to be a fundamental browser. Let's say you don't know right now like the exploit code, so there's no point of reference. But let's say ClickJacking is really bad. How do we prevent a user from clicking on something that they didn't want to? So it's not really something you'll be able to patch real easily again. So that's the point where they're at.
Probably the closest analogy to anything that's currently out there that everyone understands is cross-site request forgery. How do you stop cross-site request forgery in the browser? You can stop it on the client. You can stop it on the web server by saying, well, I'm looking for referring URLs, which is a horrible way to do it. But you see my point. Similar in that regard. So, which is again why you'd want to use links. Right.
So Adobe needs a little more time. We'll do the best we can to get the rest of the data out there as soon as seemingly possible, because it's not their bug, it'll be everybody else's.
And so the other thing is I wanted to make very clear now in front of everybody, this is not the worst vulnerability to ever hit the web. This is not Dan Kaminsky style bug. This isn't like the worst thing ever. There's a lot of buffer overflows in the browsers that give you more access or better access or whatever. The only difference between this and all that other stuff, like those kind of bugs that require like quick rollout, change this so it's doing instead of it gets, it's checking the buffer or whatever. You can't fix this with a single line of code. There is no quick way to fix this problem. It is fundamental to the way the browsers work.
So that's the story. We'd be happy to answer any questions and be as forthcoming as we can, but we have to apologize for pulling the proof of concept code. That sucks. I cannot tell you how much.
And we do have generic exploit code that will work pretty much anywhere, but we'll release that later. Yes? I didn't hear the question. Depends on the application that you're trying to attack.
Let's try it this way. Let's say I want to make you click on something. What are all those things could they possibly be? I can make you click on anything. Once you're on my page, I can make you click on any button, any image, any link, any URL, anything. So let your imagination go from there.
Very similar to cross-site request forgery.
And you won't see it. It's invisible. You won't see it. You think you're clicking on a link, but you're clicking on whatever the bad guy happens to choose. So it will break cross-site request forgery. It will break everything. Or cross-site request forgery solutions, I should say.
Yeah, there's a mic in the back
for those that want to
if you'd like to use that. Come on, guys. I know you guys got more questions. Yeah.
The link is bait.
Yeah, the link that you think you're clicking on isn't the thing you're clicking on. Although we can allow you to click on that as well at the same time, sort of. It's without giving away the exploit code itself, it would be difficult to explain all the nuances of why I can sort of do certain things. But let's put it this way: a normal user would have no idea what was going on. People in this audience probably wouldn't notice either. Except for it would react a little differently than they might initially expect. If they went and viewed the source and started poking around, of course they'd understand what happened. But
you just think of a button on any website that's really, really important, and I can make you click on it.
Right.
Okay.
So, is there any cross-site nature to this particular problem? Is this like
doesn't have to be.
If you're on the bad guy's site,
doesn't have to be.
What happens?
It has to the attack. You have to be visiting the attacker's website or a page with code that they control.
So if you went to visited a site that was cross-site scripted or something, or you're visiting a bad guy's website, or
any one of the million SQL injected malware
so
sites.
Let's imagine I'm on eBay. So what vulnerability would have to be on eBay today to allow a bad guy to introduce this?
eBay as it functions right now would be vulnerable.
So today you can put live JavaScript on an auction listing, and that would be all you need.
Although you don't need JavaScript.
Well, that was the interesting thing. So if it's cross-site, if it's vulnerable to cross-site scripting, you can use that to introduce this, right?
Yeah, you could. It's just it probably would be more difficult to cross-site script the user first. Just let them land on a page that you control. It's, blog site, MySpace profile, eBay auction listing. You don't have to cross-site script them. You just got to get running JavaScript in their browser. You could probably buy an ad on a network and get it done.
Yeah. Well, like for example, I might be trying to get someone to bid on an eBay auction, right? So if I'm specifically targeting a particular site,
Yes.
What other vulnerabilities need to be around to allow you to do
If you wanted to force somebody to bid on something
Right.
via link click that they didn't see, yeah, you certainly could.
Right, but what vulnerability has to be on eBay today?
Oh, it just, well, you may or may not call it a vulnerability, but right now on the auction listings, you can put live JavaScript on the system.
Okay.
Some people call that a vulnerability, like persistent cross-site scripting. Others would say, well, we want the users to be able to do that. So you get into those.
Yeah.
So.
So Robert, you keep saying you don't need cross-site scripting. You don't need JavaScript.
Not necessarily. It makes it easier, but not necessarily.
It makes it easier in many ways, but you don't need it.
But would you not need JavaScript on someone else's site? Like if I'm trying to target eBay, is there any way to target them without putting malicious JavaScript on their site?
Yes.
There is? And in would that attack be on their site or would it be somewhere else?
Either.
So it's always nice talking about generalities, but thanks.
Yeah, it's.
Sorry.
There's a lot more
Yeah.
questions. But.
Dave, I expected you to throw balls. Oh, you still got one. I see it.
So you said that the behavior is slightly different when this is in place. So how would one recognize that this is going on, or what can be done to protect against it?
Use links to protect yourself.
Links?
Links.
Text-based
Text-based browser, no dynamic anything.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard to. It's going to be really. I guess
Every
I
major browser.
I think in all fairness, you could, if you restrict the use of JavaScript way down, you keep your browser logged out, you remove all plugins and disable it, you get a lot out of it. It's not going to be perfect.
You still would be vulnerable to a number of bad things.
And can this do a pseudo click to, i.e. pop-ups, or just things on the page?
I don't know that we're able to do that. I haven't researched it enough to tell you definitively no. Right now, my instinct says no.
Okay,
it would be
thanks.
limited to things on the page. Yes, sir. Well, sorry, I just got a microphone. I lied to you.
Well, could this be used to populate forms, query strings, or anything like that? And
Sort of.
What was the question?
Can we populate forms, query strings, that kind of stuff? Sort of. The answer is sort of.
It depends on the instance. It would depend.
I actually have pseudo demo code that does almost that, where we're hijacking multiple clicks, where you need to click option boxes or do something else to make an action occur. But as far as filling out forms, you'd ultimately still have to get them to fill out a form. So.
It depends. Let's just call it DHTML. Normally, you would do a JavaScript and positioning. So if you want to use CSS too, you could.
Okay. And could you go through the list of vendors who have been notified? I know didn't you mention Cisco? That's the
I
one
did
was
mention
interested.
Cisco.
Okay.
We just happen to know them. We figured it was a browser-based issue, so both browser vendors know, but it will indirectly impact a lot of other people, just like it impacted Adobe.
I specifically had an NDA already set up with them. They asked for a very specific reason. They're vulnerable for a very specific reason, so I'll let them know.
Okay. And is this addressed or partially addressed in like today or yesterday's Firefox update in some way?
No.
Zero chance.
No. In the front.
So, in the talk earlier about the web app vulnerability database, there's the idea of vulnerabilities versus actual threat. Do you think once this is released or talked about, it's actually going to present a real viable threat, or is it just going to be something like CSRF, which is an ongoing problem?
So the question is, will this be a viable threat going forward? I think it always takes, anytime we talk about a new attack technique, it takes about 18 months. And then it'll be a viable threat. The bad guys will use whatever's easiest for them at the time. I guess this could be easy. I don't think they'll use it right away.
Yeah, I would suspect that this will not be used by attackers in the near future, simply because there are easier things out there.
And is there, if you can talk about it, is there a way to protect against it? It's sort of like internal cross-site request forgery. Is there a way to put mechanisms?
It's like 20 questions.
Is there a way to put a mechanism in place that's similar? Because normally that you're checking to see if the request was actually made by someone who means to make it from a different site or when they're not actually on the site. This is someone who's on the site making a request they didn't mean to make. But can you use similar mechanisms to protect against it?
No.
I don't think so.
I mean, there might be some interesting kludgy hacks to be able to do some of that stuff, but there's no easy defensible thing. I can just say, oh, use this current existing technology.
That's an interesting idea, so we'll probably look at that one.
The most obvious one is don't let yourself be framed ever. But that only affects cross-domain stuff. So if it's still on the same page, if I'm trying to get you to do something on a page, and I already have CSS or JavaScript or whatever running on that page that will allow me to do something bad.
Everybody familiar with that one-line frame-busting JavaScript code? It's good stuff.
Yeah, use it everywhere, all the time, every page, everywhere.
Oh, I failed.
Correct. Click gerbling.
I haven't heard that one. That's a new term. Yeah, I think it's very similar to all those same exploits we've been talking about all these years. Very similar.
Is it?
It's the additional stuff that we can't talk about.
Is it one-to-one or is it multiple clicks?
Well, look at him being all subversive.
Is it one-to-one or multiple? You would just need one. It depends on what you're trying to get the user to do.
Well, let's say I want them to forward their Gmail to me. Can I force them to go through a path, or is it just they click once and then?
You control what they click on. So if it requires a multi-step flow, you have to get them to click multi-step times.
So they have to play like a flash game where they're like shooting at something.
That would be the.
Exactly.
That would be, yeah.
That's ideal. If I can get you to play flash games, you're mine.
Can you make a button that adds a Gmail filter with one click? You might be able to.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that particular flow to tell you. And I think you have to fill something out to get your stuff to forward, I think. And in that case, then you'd have to get them to fill that out. But
okay, cool.
I tried to search the bug tracking of WebKey and Mozilla. I got nothing.
WebGear and Mozilla?
Yeah. Is it a kind of cross-zone security problem?
Cross-browser?
Cross-zone.
Zone?
Security zone.
It depends on how the individual browsers treat that zone and in the way that you're instantiating it on whatever page. Sometimes I think they are completely safe, but we're also talking about certain browsers where zones actually apply. There are tons of browsers where they have no concepts of zones, so it'll totally depend on the browser.
Between native object and the JavaScript processor, right?
I'm sorry?
Between the native object and the JavaScript processor.
I don't think I understood the question.
Okay.
Well, we'll talk after.
Yeah, we can talk afterwards.
Can this be done with JavaScript alone? Does it need a plugin?
Yeah, you can do it totally without any plugins.
Yeah.
You don't even need JavaScript.
Do you need JavaScript? Is that the question?
I see.
Yeah. I mean, JavaScript makes it a lot easier to make things hover under the mouse, but you don't necessarily need to.
The more plugins you've got, the better. Just turn them all on. It's great. Good things will happen.
Is what you guys have found a way to, if someone clicks on the attacker site, what actually happens is that the person actually clicks something that is rendered in his browser but belongs to a site that has a session to. For example,
that's one variant of the attack. Yep.
Okay, and so that's why it sidesteps cross-site request forgery, because that's already loaded.
You got it right.
It is the real user. It is the real website. It is the real request. Everything is the same. You're just controlling what they click on.
Right. Two more questions, guys.
You had mentioned notifying two of the web browsers companies. What about Google Chrome? Is there any implications to that?
I have no interest in going after the little guys. This is such a huge problem. I mean.
Well, would it affect
Yeah.
Yes, it would affect it.
It would definitely affect it.
Don't ask Robert about Google, don't you?
I thought I made my intentions clear.
I know people are interested in continuing this 20 questions game, but do you have anything else you can talk about?
You mean other speeches? I could just
Yeah,
whip
like
something out
replay.
and-
I mean, I know it might insult the, some of the viewers or some of the attendees who already have seen your other talks, but
I personally have nothing ready. The last 3 months was nothing about this. This is why I was pretty ticked off. So.
I do, and actually I was thinking about presenting tomorrow, but I realized I have an early flight, so I probably won't be able to do it.
So
but
myself,
one last question.
The next one.
Last question.
Okay, last question.
So you talked about one-click scenarios, I guess, where you could make them do the one-click when they didn't mean to. But you also talked about difficulty of filling in a form and if you're required to put something in. So it sounds to me, possibly, if we were thinking of a
mitigation.
a brokerage website that would make you put in the security you wanted to buy, and you have to put it in, and then would make you, when you say, I want to buy it, would ask for a password or something else like that. It is relatively insulated from this scenario you're talking about.
That would be correct, yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
No, there is one scenario where that might not be completely true, which is where I can autofill through cross-site request forgery a bunch of that information, and then all I need you to do is click on one thing because you forgot the option box or something.
The other question is, with one click, can we totally obliterate the same origin policy altogether? If you can get the user to click on anything, can we obliterate the same origin policy where it doesn't exist?
Okay.
So, can you guys think of a link that does a click that does that? Then you got an idea.
Well, again, we're really, really sorry, guys. We had everything all prepared. I've got the code ready. We've got a white paper. We're going to probably, when we do release this, we'll probably release it through ihackcharities.org first. Good, help out the charities, that kind of stuff first. You guys can get it maybe a week earlier than everybody else. By then, it'll be widely spread what we're up to. And then we'll have the exploit code. We have a couple different variants, multiple different things that you can do with it. It's very generic. It works everywhere. It's extremely easy to configure and make it work. So.
And I think the last thing I like to say is, without browser security, I mean, is the web really secure at that point? I mean, we can do everything we need to do as developers to keep the site secure, but if the client side is it's just riddled with it's completely broken on the client side, and we need it to get a lot better if we have any hope in this stuff. I mean, what the bad guy can do now when you just land on their site, even though you're completely patched, is just astronomical. It's just ridiculous.
Let the balls fly.
Sorry.
If you got balls, throw them.
Thanks, guys.
Hey. So we're going to end this talk, obviously, a little early. It gives us time for take a break. There are some other talks going on right now, so we apologize for cutting this one short. The next talk after this one